Okay, all right. Again, Fred, thank you again for being here. So, could you start by telling us a little bit about your company, FinalSpark, and how you personally got involved in the field of neuron computing?
Well, FinalSpark is first really company about R&D, So we started this company in 2014 with the idea to make some advances in AI. And in this process, at some point in the development, we realized that it could be very rational to use biological neurons instead of trying to simulate sophisticated neurons.
That's almost 10 years ago.
Yes, correct. Because for the first 5 years after the creation of FinalSpark, we really wanted to make a big move in AI. So we looked at all the way to do AI that have not been followed sufficiently, in the literature.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there are many strategies to perform AI. Okay. And one is particularly known today, which is LLM, but there are many others, okay? And LLM using very simplistic simulations of neurons. But one of the way that we followed was to use so-called spiking neurons. So what you do in AI, not all the time, but often, is that you try to simulate how neurons are working. And today, most of the AI systems work this way. They simulate neurons, but they simulate them in a very, very simple way. That means basically a neuron that you will find in AI today will be like, is going to sum inputs, just regular summation. And if the summation of the inputs is greater than 0, then the output will be greater than 0. It cannot be more simple than this.
Exactly.
But but there are many other ways actually to simulate neurons. For instance, to start with, a neuron is not working this way. A neuron is spiking.
Right.
A spiking, that means its output is not going to be constant over time. There's going to be nothing, and suddenly there is going to be a spike for a few milliseconds if we talk about biological neurons, human neurons, and then nothing again. So this kind of neurons can also be simulated, and they have been simulated for the past 30 years. Okay, this is the kind of neurons that we started to simulate at FinalSpark the first 5 years after the creation. And as I'm talking here, I have in my hands a book written by Wolfram Gerstner, who is sort of the king of spiking neurons models. Okay, and this professor actually happens to teach at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and this is where I made also my PhD. It just maybe a coincidence, but we felt very inspired by this kind of models. So we started to make some simulations of spiking neurons, okay? And then we realized something else, about the connectivity between neurons. So roughly speaking, okay, in your brain, neurons may be connected in every direction, okay? And you might say, well, what's the point? Well, in many cases in AI, we don't like this too much. And we like the connections to be ordered in some way so that when there is computation, it always goes in the same direction. It can sometimes go back. It's also possible, but it adds some complexity and it must be done very carefully. And one of the things that we added, and that also Wolfram Gerstner added, was not only to use spiking neurons, but to connect them in all directions, which normally, as said, people avoid to do. If you do this, you get a model which is quite complex to simulate, okay, and quite unpredictable too. And this is why it's not used.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not the case because it's very challenging. But
Yeah.
at this point, I told you with FinalSpark, we just wanted to look exactly where people were not looking. So that was perfect for us. But when we started to do this, after a few years, we had a few hundreds of neurons fully connected, spiking. Wonderful. But for this simulation to run on digital computer, we needed about several kilowatts of power. And we are engineers. Okay, we just try to find the best solution to solve a problem. And this looked like a very bad solution to solve a problem, to use artificial neurons computed on digital computer for a few hundreds of neurons, while our brain with hundreds of billion, 100 of billion of neurons is consuming 20 watts.
Right.
So you see the gap here. I mean, people have quantified this like 1 million times more efficient is our brain compared to a simulation. So then, this idea came, yes, we are not going to succeed because a few hundreds of neurons is nothing. We cannot do anything useful with a few hundreds of neurons. Okay. So if we still want to use spiking neurons and with a complex connectivity, then we have to replace the simulation by the real thing. That's it.
Right. You know what? The first time when I came across the neuron computing ideas, I thought this is very much eye-opening. But other than efficiency considerations, what are the other fundamental advantages that you see compared to traditional silicon-based computing, like GPUs, that everyone is familiar with, or even newer paradigms like quantum computing?
So I don't know. Okay. Let's be clear. Okay.
Yeah.
And there is someone that is called Mr. Shockley, and 80 years ago he invented the solid-state transistor.
Right.
Okay, and I'm pretty sure that if you had asked him at this time, Mr. Shockley, what is the advantage of solid-state transistor? He would have told you some reasons, like maybe it's more reliable. Or bugs are not really biological bugs. They are less sensitive to bugs that doing some short circuits with lumps that were used instead of solid state transistor. Okay, but he wouldn't have guessed that the real advantage was that we could miniaturize it to create smartphones and to create internet connections. It was impossible for him to imagine this kind of applications. Okay.
Yeah.
And then now you're asking me basically the same question to me. Okay. Say, Fred. Okay. So I tell you about the bugs, about the reliable, the equivalent of the bugs and reliability of the solid state transistor compared to the lump transistor. And I tell you about energy efficiency because this is the most obvious thing. But it's very likely that I'm wrong, that a factor of 1 million of gain of efficiency is incredible, and it's going to be by itself a revolution.
Yeah.
But there are other things that I cannot even imagine that are way more important and that are going to be the consequence of using organoid for computation instead of simulations.
Right.
And I don't know that. But we all feel, you and me, that this is disruptive. This is totally new. This is disruptive thinking, and so when we know this, that when something like this happens, like, whoa, this is incredible. We can think about this. This is going to change many things. And we don't know what, but we feel that it's going to be big.
Yeah, exactly. I actually like your answer to this question, Fred. I mean, the way you answer this question, which is actually so much convincing, even though you don't have the answer.
I should be a politician after all,
You're good. Like when we talk about living neurons, where do these neurons used in research typically came from? Are they from animals or vegetables or biological sources? Or
No, they are all human neurons.
Oh,
Human.
really? Human?
Yeah.
Okay.
Only human. So then something else comes into play. Okay.
Yeah.
The fact that we can use human neurons, it comes for an invention from Professor Yamanaka, who got a Nobel Prize for this a long time ago, like 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
He invented a way. Basically, you take cells from your skin,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and we can transform them into stem cells.
Mm. Okay.
And when you have stem cells of yourself,
Yeah.
you can create any cells of your body.
Right.
And of course, and we can create neurons. This is what we do. And
Got it.
as many, and we create millions of them. We have we have our own lab here,
Mm-hmm.
and we create millions and millions of human neurons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just multiplies. We have to stop it. Okay, we have to stop the process not to have too many.
Ah, okay. Because otherwise it's kind of automatic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting when you create an integrated circuit, you
Mm-hmm.
have millions of resistors.
Right.
But as you know, they don't multiply spontaneously,
Exactly.
You have to manufacture all of them. So that's the good thing about living things is that
Mm-hmm.
they are machines which duplicate themselves.
Okay. Okay. Then this is completely different than the traditional silicon way of manufacturing. And then how does the scalability looks like? I mean, say for example, you wanted to achieve the computing power of training a certain large language model. How many living neurons do we actually need, or how long would it take to reproduce all those that scale number of living neurons, like
So
roughly?
these are two different questions.
Right.
So we believe, I'm going to turn this another way. We believe that, imagine tomorrow we want to do the equivalent of Amazon Web Services, for instance,
Yeah.
just for serving AI computation.
Mhm.
Okay, so to run actually AI. Okay, we believe that we could do potentially the same thing.
Mhm.
Okay, and it's going to consume 100 times less. Okay, we may have many more neurons needed instead because the switching time of a neuron, biological neurons, is much slower than a transistor, than a simulated neuron. Okay,
Mhm.
So that's for sure. But all in all, consider just the physical size of your brain.
Mhm.
And here you have 100 billion of neurons,
Mhm.
vastly connected and spiking. This is an impressive source of computation power.
Yeah.
Readily available, basically. So since we can culture nervous tissue.
Mhm.
Now you said how long it would take to transfer an LLM in a biological network like this.
Yeah.
Sorry, again, I don't know. Well, actually, I tell you I don't know, but I can tell you also nobody knows. So that's the good news.
Yeah, of course.
It's
Yeah.
not only me, that's not good. I talked to Fred, he doesn't know. Maybe someone else. No, nobody knows. But it's we are still far from this. Okay, we
Yeah.
are like quantum computing,
Mhm.
like 15 years ago.
Right.
So at this point, we are just trying to master learning. Okay. So we are not talking about transferring a full LLM. We are just trying to make a XOR. I mean, very basic things. Okay. Just
Yeah.
to modify the connections between the neurons to achieve something useful.
Okay.
I think you know very well about artificial neural networks.
Yeah.
But what happened 35 years ago is that it was the situation where we knew how to connect neurons, but the problem is that we didn't know how to change the weight in the direction where it does something useful for the people. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And then a guy came and invented, symbolic differentiation of gradient, stuff like this. I mean, which seemed quite obvious actually afterward.
Right.
But and then suddenly we knew in which direction we should change the weight in order to have something useful. And some people, others, say that most of the weight actually are not useful in many cases. And Saint-Lucan came and said, well, let's put most of the weights equal to 0, and the remaining one, let's give it them the same value, like in convolutional networks. And you're going to decrease the capability of your system. But in the same time, you're going to decrease its complexity to such a point that it's going to be way more easy to train it. And okay, so anyway, and we're in the same situation today. We still have now with biological networks to find a way to change the synaptic connections. So this is the weight, this is the connection between the neurons, so that the outputs is useful for a given input. I tell you, it's not going to be gradient descent or things like this for sure. It's not going to work this time. Because the thing is that when you are on a computer, obviously, all the connections are numbers, okay? Tensors of numbers, wonderful. So if you want to look at the number, you look at it, it's there, okay? If you want to modify it, you modify it, no problem, okay? With biology, so far we've been talking about all the pros of biology, you know? We can also talk about the cons, okay? In biology, it's the opposite now. Just to look at the connection and to know the connection is extremely complex. And once you get it, modify it is also very complex. And once you've done all this, you're not even sure that your connection is going to stay like the one you set. And in this world, you know, it's not easy. Like we were a startup, we say, okay, we want to make a revolution in AI. Okay, are you joking, guys? You are 2 of you. Initially, we were 2, okay, and you want to make a revolution in AI. You have Google spending billions, and you want to make a revolution? Are you kidding? You have 0 chance. It's just a joke, okay? But you're right. Surprisingly, there are some quite, original approaches which have not been explored even today. And this is one of them. And as you said, we are talking about training a biological network in vitro, okay? So in vitro is the biological word to say you are not using a living animal. Okay? You just have cells. And this has, roughly speaking, never been studied. And this is incredible, I tell you, because you have to imagine that each year in your biology, you have tens of thousands of papers which are published. And this has been going on for the past 30 years. And the papers about training in vitro some nervous cells, maybe, there are maybe 10 papers about this. So it's really not, people are just trying, just the beginning of a new field of research and possible, maybe a new industry, actually.
Assuming you have what you need, what would you see that actually need to be done to make this thing available for large scale of computing?
You need to master training, okay? Once you know the best way to modify the network connectivity, you've done the whole thing. And just consider that in our case, we are also using neuromodulators, for instance, electrical stimulations, electrical readings, and we also use a lot of, you'd be surprised, but we're also using artificial neural networks actually just to interface with biological neural networks. So we need to master all this to have a trainable procedure for successful training. This is one of the challenge and one of the cool thing, okay? But people can come to FinalSpark.com. There is a live section. They can see in real time the activity of the neurons that we have here near me.
I actually look at those. Other than you and your co-founder or partner of the company, who else in the world you see that are doing similar things in this front?
First, today FinalSpark, well, we are 6 people now, okay? We've
okay.
grown, and we multiply the lab space by 3, and we are working with 10 universities spread around the world, and we give them remote access to our neurons. So by internet, so they can make also some experiments for training. Okay, and so you can find a list of universities which are active on our website.
Uh-huh.
And there are also a company called Cortical Labs in Australia, who is also very active on this. And of course, we know them because we are so few. And there is also Koniku, Koniku, in the US, who has been quite active also in this field. Maybe there is a new one which is going to be created on the West Coast. I don't know, but that's it.
You must have been working with some investors already, right? Other than, are you kidding me? What type of other feedback have you received? Do people really believe that this is the area that can actually solve the energy challenge of traditional GPU-based infrastructure?
I don't know if they believe it. They are all fascinated. Many comes to us, but they are all afraid because it's so new. They are still very reluctant to sign. And this is actually the real problem right now.
What are the biggest costs that you see of building all these things? I guess reproducing sufficient amounts of living neurons may not be that costly, even though I'm not a biological expert. What are the main areas that requires a lot of capitals?
It's really research. Okay, I was talking about training, mastering research. So this is human capital. I would say there is also some machines. Okay, we do, for instance, a lot of RNA sequencing because we create cells. We want to make sure they are correct. So we look at the 35,000 expressed genes of our neurons to make sure they are all good.
Yeah.
Just to tell you a glimpse of the complexity of what you're looking at. And but I think we're looking for a total of 50 million, okay, with the first round of 10 million Swiss francs or dollars. And so it's not that much money, but it's more about the fact that it's so new. Okay. If you come with quantum computing is as wild, I would say, okay, as a biocomputer, but it's been around for 15 years, so people are used to this. Okay. And now they invest to this, but this is new.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned about Amazon Web Services earlier. Now you are actually also building a platform for researchers worldwide to interface with these biological neural networks. Is that also the same business model that you are envisioning? In the future that this could be another computing platform similar to Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud?
Yeah. Ultimately, this is we want to compete with them. Yeah, we want to have a server like an Everest issue, which is going to scale on hundreds of meters with trillions of neurons. Yeah, this is what we want to provide.
Okay. Yeah, that seems realistic and direct business model that easily can be able to understand. I think the other curiosity question definitely is that is there any legal or ethical considerations or concerns when you navigate in this work? Because it is stem cells from humans.
Yes, there are, of course. What we started to do is, so they are because we care, okay? Not because the government put some regulations, because the governments don't know about this and never heard about it.
Yeah,
basically.
I guess so.
So it will take some time before we have some laws. But we consider that this new paradigm should be well received by society. Okay. And well received means that we are already working with ethicians that we are voluntarily contacted and philosophers from the academic world. And we want them to publish and to study this new field. So we bring them the science and then they do their job. And there are already some publications, I think, which have been published on philosophical journals and about what we are doing. And I hope others are going to come because people have to start thinking and people like you relay the academic world to the general public so that people understand what is maybe going to be the future and are ready for it.
Yeah.
I think I can tell you the first takeaway of the ethician was fundamentally they don't really see a problem with the principle of using human cells for computation. What the problem that they see is the speed to which we deploy this new technology. Okay, if this comes too fast, like in 1 year you have biological networks anywhere, everywhere. It may be shocking for the society. The society is not ready for this. So it's also acceptance takes time, and this is also a consideration that I totally overlooked.
Considering the majority of the audience of my podcast are from, even though there are really a certain percentage of people are listening from North America, from Singapore, and other part of the Asia countries, etc. Is there anything that you wanted to share with this audience or the potential investors or researchers in these particular areas?
I must say that I see. Well, about China now. Okay. One person was a PhD student, made an impressive work about 5 to 10 years ago about biological computing. And he was one of the first one, probably the first one to make a PhD about this. So I must highlight this because I made a lot of literature review. Okay. So that's the good thing about China in biocomputing. Now, I see that I have almost no investor coming from China. I have a lot of requests about investors from all over the world. Okay. Nobody has signed yet, but many come to us. Okay. But nobody from China. And we have a collaboration with many universities all around the world. But fundamentally, it's Europe and US, and I think nothing from China. So I would be interested to have more from China. We won a prize in Shanghai. And I can send you the link afterwards. About innovation prize. But that's all we have right now. Yeah.
We are almost on time, Brad. Thank you so much for being with us again. I think we will be able to touch base again, whether it's a dive deeper session or it's a follow-up on potential collaborations or research or even investment. Thanks again, Brad.
That looks wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.